Hey bit shooters, Mike Martins here with the Mike Martins channel. Just here with the family visiting dad. Want to take a small mental break here for myself, and I want to do a housing wrap up in the Commonwealth and what's happening. Well, let's start off with New Zealand. Foreign buyers banned from buying housing is working. Housing is now dipped in some parts of Auckland more than 36%, while some parts are still plateaued, sitting at around 10-12% drops. Um, and outside Welland and other areas, you're starting to see stagnant and a lot of properties going up for sale around the New Zealand area. Um, Also, the whole meth testing thing, it's been quiet for a while, and black mold testing, it's been quiet for a while. Nothing in the news. A lot of families still being put up in hotels on a regular basis. That's still happening right now, and a lot of people sleeping rough in cars. And homeless levels in New Zealand. Okay, New Zealand areas are still seeing a little bit of uptick, and you're seeing a lot of people at food shelters and shelters still getting food and basic necessities to get by. Let's move over to Australian. Right now, Melbourne seeing an oversupply in the markets. Right now, Melbourne is having its own Leaning Tower of Sydney. Leaning Tower. Lots of problems, structural problems in some of the apartments that are showing up, and lots of oversupply on the market right now. And a lot of real estate agents are preaching to people, telling them to go ahead. Now is a good time to buy. It's the best time to buy. It's a buyer's market now. No, it's a dead cat bounce. I think properties need to go back another 15, 14 quarters in Melbourne to get back to proper affordability levels. Homelessness is still on an uptick right now. Still, a lot of shelters and operating out of capacity right now in Melbourne and in Melbourne's surrounding area. Let's go down to Sydney. Sydney, same thing. Big problems in Sydney too. Massive oversupply. Lots of people walking away from pre-builts. Lots of pre-builts not completing their projects, and I don't know how they're going to refund some of the people that put down payments on their properties. Also, right now you got the you got the Opal Tower, but then you got that other tower. I forgot the name of it. Forgot the name of the tower, and there's a couple of other buildings right now where people are leaving due to sketchy, shoddy manufacturing. That building that I'm talking about is put in the comments below so people can find it online. Is now a 10-year build now, coming apart and falling apart at the seams, and structural movements in the basement or the lower areas, and noises. So you're going to start seeing that around the Sydney areas where a lot of shoddy or corners were cut. I don't think it's the engineers, and I don't think it's the designers or any of that. I think it's a lot of the builders are taking I think a lot of the builders should be taking the blame for cutting back on materials and costs, or really bad workmanship, or really bad, horrible employees. They have no idea what the hell they're doing. So that could be too. Lack of skill could be a problem too with that. So that's that, and you're going to start seeing that a lot coming forward. And we know about the re-election of the Australian so-called Conservative Party there. It's kind of weird how they label their party as a work party. There's a couple of different parties, and stand for different things, like they do here in the Northern Hemisphere for us. And there was a Liberal Party there that was hinged on nobody hinged on affordable housing, and nobody wanted to touch the stamp duty. And there were protests in Sydney where a lot of old baby boomers don't want to touch the housing and want to keep it as is. A lot of baby boomers did tap into their equity. So right now, if they start touching housing and moving around the stamp duty and changing the laws, you're going to start seeing a lot of problems for a lot of boomers to pay down some of this debt. So I think they don't want to touch anything because of that. Perth's still on a slump. It's been on a slump for the last, 14 quarters right now. And Perth has a long way to go before you see corrections. Let's head up to London. London right now, I think it's on its 25th or 26th straight month of declines. You see a bit of an uptick here and there. It's only when they introduce first-time home buyer. Oh, I forgot Australia, down under, they're passing the 40-year mortgages too. That's a problem. 40-year mortgage. Who the heck is going to pay a 40-year mortgage? And are you serious? Anyways, so you got to buy a house when you're 20, so that by the time you're 60, you'll be paid off, and then you got 5 years to retire and sell it. Anyways, okay, let's move on. Let's move on to London. London right now is in the pits. It's down 22 to 24 months right now, so you're looking at 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 6 quarters down, going into 7 quarters down in the next month. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to the United Kingdom. Ireland right now, massive protests, 12,000 sleeping rough in Ireland, in Dublin, and that is huge, and 3,000 is children. That's a huge problem. And Ireland, they're getting off their butts and couches and complaining and fighting on the streets, basically, for people don't want free housing, people want fair housing. And you do have bidding wars still in parts of Dublin and Belfast up in Northern Ireland, where people are still bidding on properties. People want to park their money outside their countries. And Edinburgh, Scotland right now is right now plateauing. Nothing's moving right now, nothing's selling, and nothing's being purchased, nobody's moving on Scotland right now. So Edinburgh's looking like very plateau right now, no movement. Ireland, a little bit of movement, like I said. London, dead flat. 213,000 pounds still gets you a decent, 213,000 euros, sorry, in Scotland still gets you something decent, and 185,000 to 250,000 euros gets you something decent in Ireland. Yeah, everyone's moving to Middle England, left the mass exodus of London and all the big cities, and they're going to have to raise taxes for these big cities to flip their bills, because a lot of the blue-collar workers aren't working there anymore that actually pay the bills and actually pay their taxes. Yes, lots of vacant properties where taxes aren't being paid on some of them too. Apparently, one of the grand magistrates or somebody is moving in on some of the properties there, because a lot of the taxes haven't been upkept on some of the properties there. So I'm not sure what's happening with these some abandoned homes there in London, in the London area. Comment below if you're in the London area and tell us what's happening with that and people not paying taxes on property, or what's going on with that. All right, let's move to the United States. We got a huge problem right now in Western United States. California. Okay, the city of Los Angeles has, I think it was 22,000 homeless, and the city in LA County, you're looking at 44,000 homeless, and in San Francisco you got 22,000 homeless. So your San Jose is 11,000 homeless, and San Diego you got 9,800 homeless. So there's the homelessness is reaching killer levels right now. Reaching levels of unproportionate, beyond belief. No one could ever imagine this many people in a first world country living in a third world, worse than a third world situation right now in the state of California. Oregon is seeing a little bit of its troubles. A lot of Californians moving north, and then Washington State, homelessness out of control. There's a video on YouTube you should watch called "Seattle's Dying," and you guys will see what I'm talking about. Huge problem right now. Seattle's in huge issues right now with homelessness. They're combating about 19,000 homeless right now. So we'll see what happens. That spreads all the way down to Olympia and north to Blaine. So we got to see kind of when the numbers start trickling in and what's going on with the homeless situation. And I know that in Seattle right now, Washington State is that shelters are at the capacity right now. Okay, so anyways, let's move across to New York. Mass exodus of the state of New York. A lot of people for affordability levels are moving south to other states like Alabama and Louisiana and Georgia, North and South Dakotas, North and South Carolina, and Florida is seeing a mass exodus of people moving south. The state of Nevada right now is plateauing and in decline, looking like the bubble has popped in the state of Nevada, especially Las Vegas and the surrounding Las Vegas area. Reno, Nevada, kind of stagnant, not moving. And Salt Lake City, Utah right now has already hit its level right now. The average median price right now is still sitting at $396,000. Unaffordability levels are hitting and plaguing Utah, the state of Utah. Go down to Phoenix, Arizona, looking okay. Properties moving decently there. Moving into Texas, Fort Worth, Texas still is one of the #1 growing parts of the state of Texas, doing really well right now. Followed by Conroe and other parts of Texas right now that are doing well for people mass exiting their states. Economic exodus from California moving east. Florida right now is stagnant, kind of not moving anywhere. So Florida, same thing, not moving. It's just kind of there. And they're going to be lowering rates. And if they do lower rates to record low numbers, you'll start seeing a little bit of movement in the housing market in the United States. And if you do, you're going to see a lot of Americans running to their banks to refinance their mortgages. And you're going to see a lot of bond sell-offs, huge bond sell-offs you're going to start seeing in the United States. Let's move up to Canada. Vancouver, completely stagnant, down 18 to 24%, depending on what pocket you are in the city. If you're in West, North, or East Van, or where you're at, you're seeing anywhere from 18 to 24% drop in property prices. Richmond, BC now is finally seeing mass stagnation and a lot of people walking away from pre-builts. Same thing with Vancouver, West Vancouver, and East Van. A lot of people are, and North Van, walking away from pre-builts right now. Lots of pre-built problems we're seeing right now. And over in Burnaby, same thing, stagnant up to Surrey, all the way up to Hope. You're seeing nothing but stagnation, but still moving more units than the Vancouver area per capita, only because the affordable units are still available in those further cities outside of the major cities. Edmonton, Alberta, Edmonton and Calgary, seeing a slight uptick in movement in properties, small, stagnant uptick. We'll see by the end of this quarter and see where it heads. Also, we're looking at the province of Ontario, still seeing a mass exodus to Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, Ottawa. Ontario's in Ottawa. Ottawa's in Ontario, but you know what I mean. People moving far away from Toronto as far as possible. People no longer moving to the suburbs, but secondary burbs and thrice burbs. I call them thrice burbs because they're three cities away from the major cities. People are moving to places like Niagara Falls, London, Ontario, and Windsor, Ontario, further away from the GTA and the Toronto area. They want to scrap the stress test there because they are realized that no one qualifies for the mortgage, but the stress test in Canada does work because it works in every other major city except Vancouver and Toronto. Why? Because affordability levels aren't there. Now, what's happening across Canada? Well, there are rumors of lowering rates. In Canada, they approved the pipeline, so it looks like that's going to flow through, and that's going to help the Canadian economy to help export oil around the world. Now, what's happening in parts of pockets of Canada? You're starting to see places like Aurora and Newmarket in parts of northern Ontario, north of Toronto, plummeting like rocks. Some properties are down 50% right across the board, 50% down, 30% down, 50% down. I had Steve the plumber on the show last week. We discussed this. And that's a wrap-up. That's pretty much a wrap-up for all the English-speaking countries. But right now, Canada's looking to lower rates because they can't get the stress test changed. So to get more people into the market, they're doing the first-time home buyers loans. Watch out for the first-time home buyers loans. It's dangerous, guys. Dangerous. Why are you going to borrow money because you can't afford to buy something already? Use logic, people. That's why a lot of people are mass exiting the major cities. I'm very interested. I'm going to get Moby on this, one of the city councillors there out in Ontario on the show, who ran for office several times and understands the constituents, has his constituents, and I want him to explain to us in an in-depth interview on how are these big cities going to flip their budgets. Very simple. They've been raising property taxes in every major city here in Canada and some parts of the US, but in Canada they have. A lot of companies like Dunlop and the paints company there in Vancouver and a couple of other ceramics company have closed down because their property taxes went from $29,000 a year to $43,000 a year. So they had to give people their papers and have to basically sell their building. And that's how bad it's gotten. 100-year-old companies in Canada closing their doors because they just can't afford to stay afloat. Same thing in Australia. Lots of the big chains are starting to look like they're closing their doors, and under so much taxation and embargoes and all kinds of crap. And now we got the tariff wars right now. We're in an economic war right now, and we are going to start feeling the pinch, and it's going to start hitting our door fronts. If it hasn't yet, it is. New car sales down, record low down. New car sales are seeing the lowest sales it's been since 2008. And parking lots are overflowing, and they're asking, dealerships aren't placing big orders on cars like they used to anymore. So they're at the lots, at the manufacturing plants, there's a massive oversupply of vehicles. So guys, anyways, I want to throw this out there, kind of a wrap up on the housing, on what's going on. And all the way from Canada down to the US, across the pond to the United Kingdom, and down under to Australia, and off to New Zealand. So every English-speaking country has its own dilemma when it comes to housing. And I've been connecting these dots for many years now. Many years I've been connecting these dots, and I'm getting emails every day from people from all over the place thanking me, Mike, I got into a divorce because of you, but you know what, you're right, I'd be 200 grand underwater right now if I bought that property with my wife. She divorced me, she married somebody else, and they bought that property, and guess what, they're 200 grand underwater. So there's a lot of people and I get a lot of messages from people thanking me and telling me that, you know what, I listened to you in the back of my mind on what you've been saying all these years now, for 6-7 years now, that this is dangerous. This is a dangerous game people are playing, and with these real estate agents, despicable. Oh, if you don't buy now, you'll never be able to own. So if those people bought a year ago when you told them to, right now they'd be underwater by a couple of $100 grand, depending on what city they live in. Anyways, guys, don't forget to support me on Patreon if you want to buy me a coffee. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I look forward to reading your comments, and thanks for watching.